Did you know one Southern style crispy chicken sandwich meal is equal to 900 milligrams of salt with a side of medium fries is 320 milligrams of salt, adding up to 1220 milligrams of salt. How much salt do you need on a daily basis? Time's up. You need 1500 milligrams a day. That makes the McDonald's meal have 81% of what you need in one meal of the day. Yeah.
It's more than just a grain of salt. Let's go more in depth. Salt, or should I say sodium chloride, is constructed by two different ions, positively charged sodium ions and negatively charged chloride ions. They are all held together by attractive forces. This was all predicted by the Swedish chemist Svante August Arrhenius.
Arrhenius first proposed the idea of oppositely charged ions as an explanation for the structure and properties of salt and their solutions in 1887. The idea was the more salt that dissolved in the solution, the greater the concentration of the charge requires for an electronic current. Salt is a solid made up of sodium, a positively charged ion, and chloride, a negatively charged ion.
The way sodium chloride dissolves in water is a simple process. As you guys know, a water molecule has two sides, a hydrogen side that is positive and an oxygen side that's negative.
Let's go back to history.
It was the 4th of July in reverse on Japanese shipping, harbors, airfields, factories.
It was an advantage for the government to tax salt. Salt was an essential need for people. There were no substitute for salt and everyone needed it. As the Roman Empire expanded, also did salt monopolies and salt taxes. They introduced the famous salt tax called the gabelle.
The bell was not just a tax on salt. It also carried the requirement that every man, woman, and child over the age of 8 purchase a weekly amount of salt at a price set by the king.
It is one of the most common minerals on Earth. So it may be a surprise that until recently, salt was very difficult to come by. Because it was so difficult to take from the earth and use, salt became exceptionally valuable.
You can go from present-day life, where you have salt everywhere, to the rest of human history as of 100 years ago, when salt was almost impossible to come by. Because of the scarcity of salt and because of our dependence on it, it's been of strategic value since the dawn of time. Actually, the very first documented war ever fought was over salt in China, some several thousand years ago.
A reminder of how rare salt used to be is still with us today in a ritual from the time of Christ. Few people now know why we throw salt over our shoulder. In biblical times, nothing came easy. One had to work very hard to afford basic necessities like salt, which was so valuable that spilling it was considered the work of the devil, creeping up and pushing you from behind. The remedy then was to throw a pinch of salt over your shoulder, which would blind Satan and drive him back to his fiery pit. To early man, losing even this little bit of salt was a source of great dismay. But this is no longer the case.
We manufacture salt now on huge industrial scale. Salt is used as the foundation for many of the chemicals and materials that we use in our modern day lives, from glass to plastics to dyes and textiles and paper. It's used by millions of tons to de-ice roads.
Today, the mineral that wars were once fought over is so common we can waste it for nothing more than a few moments' amusement.